Today on Lockdown Red Wings, was the season a success? Breaking down Yzerman and Lalonde's end-of-season availability.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I am a podcast producer for the Daily J, a WWJ news radio podcast. Well, Scotty's the host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And today's episode is brought to you by HelloFresh. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. Go to HelloFresh.com/NHL60 and use code NHL60 for 60% off, plus free shipping. And today, Scotty, it's going to be a pretty straightforward episode for the listeners. We teased it on Friday. We're going to talk about whether or not we believed this was a successful season for the Detroit Red Wings. And then we also got the Yzerman and Lalonde media availability, but I think that folds kind of nicely into that topic as a whole as well, because you got to hear their thoughts on the season. But before we get to that, I just want to remind you guys, Robbie Fabry hockey stick game used. You got a few more days to enter. Again, you just enter by submitting via DMs or replies to our Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram messages, again, or just DM us proof of your YouTube subscription, and then you're entered to win. And then we're going to pull that winner on Thursday's recording. So you won't find out till Friday. But so just so you know, Thursday will be the deadline. 4:20 will be the deadline to enter on that one. That one, by the way, is not planned out. That was completely coincidental. And then also, we haven't even mentioned either Brian Lashoff's retiring.
Yeah, dude. The dog.
Everyone's the dog in your eyes.
No, let's be honest with ourselves. That's the dog.
I always had a soft spot for Brian Lashoff, and it's actually, I didn't know his nickname in Grand Rapids was it Mr. Consistent, something like that, Mr. Reliable.
Yeah.
And it's exactly why I always had a soft spot for him, because when you called Brian Lashoff up to the NHL, you knew exactly what you were getting, and you knew he was going to be competent, and you knew he was going to be safe, and just
he was the epitome of, and I say this in a successful connotation, he was the epitome of in baseball you call it like a 4A player, right? Like
yeah.
he is the epitome of, like, he's going to give you top 6 production, be a leader of men down at the AHL level. And if you need a spot filled at the NHL level, he will slide in and will not miss a beat. Like, that is the epitome of him. A very, very successful career on the ice. Very, very honestly cool career, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
With especially toward the end there, when he kind of became the like I said, kind of the
he was a mentor
leader, right? Yeah. Of an AHL team. So yeah, big ups for sure. That's a heck of a career.
He's very well respected within the organization, and obviously he became the captain of the Grand Rapids Griffins and mentor. Yeah. He received a nickname. They even the day he retired was like Brian Lashoff Day. The mayor of Grand Rapids made it literally Brian Lashoff Day, which is incredible. But like, even when he got traded a couple of years ago as part of like a deal,
I forgot about that.
He got traded to Tampa, I believe it was, but Tampa was like, nah, you can, like, we'll loan you to Grand Rapids so you can stay their captain and stay there. And then the Red Wings re-signed him in the offseason on an AHL level deal so he can stay there. So, like, clearly he's a very well-respected person at all levels of the organization and was really important towards the development and the mentorship of the young players in Grand Rapids who could one day make the NHL level. So great career for Brian Lashoff. Mad props to him. From an undrafted free agent to playing 135 games at the NHL level and becoming the captain of an AHL team, and I believe winning a Calder Cup or two as he was on those rosters, I believe. Yeah. It was an impressive career for him. Congratulations, Brian Lashoff.
Yeah, there's a picture of him hoisting that thing. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So from there, though, we got to move on because we have a jam-packed episode, and you guys know our episodes are only supposed to be 30 minutes long, but,
we really crushed that.
Yeah, we're really good at that. But yeah, Scotty, the question is simple. Do you view this season as a successful one for the Detroit Red Wings?
Well, you just want to answer that off rip? I do.
Yeah.
I think this is I think this was a successful season. I do. Was it a like over expectations season? Was it a the doors got blown off and I'm like, oh my goodness, like I'm in a even different like opinion or mindset about this organization than I was like 6-8 months ago. Like, no, it wasn't an overachieving season, but was it a success? I think so. I think that you laid out a foundation. You know who's is a part of your core going forward. You got some youth, some playing time. You traded players at their at the deadline. You got some good value in return for the players you got rid of. Um, yeah, I mean, and the biggest thing, as we mentioned and cited a lot throughout the season, was are you going to be playing competitive hockey later in the year? Are the games going to matter at any point in the season? And it was pre-trade deadline even, and I know that that's not like playing meaningful, like close competitive, meaningful hockey in like April or anything like that. I understand that, but I mean, there was a what 2 week stretch there right before leading up to the trade deadline where we were like standings watching for the first time in what 8 years. So yeah, I think that this is a successful season, and the reason that I think that is because I think you laid a good foundation to take a big step forward and really do a lot of damage this offseason and put together a potentially a playoff team this fall.
Yeah, I agree. And to add on to that, I would definitively say that this was a successful season because if you look at from our perspective, Scotty, what we talked about at the beginning of the year, we spoke about improvements in the points category and improvements in the advanced stats category, and we got all of that. Now we talked about so the over under at the beginning of the year was set to 84.5 points. I, looking a bit optimistically and maybe just trying to will it into existence, took the over and was hoping for 85 points. Now the team finished with 80. Just because they finished with 80, it's not a failure of a year because I understood when I said that going from 74 to 85 points, an 11-point jump is incredibly hard to accomplish as a rebuilding team in the NHL. They got
Yeah.
6 more points. They went from 74 points to 80 points, which is 3 more wins, 32 wins to 35 wins. That's an improvement. If you look at from year to year, their Corsi 4 percentage, it has been, believe it or not, an improvement. Now, this is where it's like you go from like one of the worst in the league to still pretty bad, but not as bad. So you take it with grains of salt. They went last year in 2022. They were the 28th worst team in Corsi 4 percentage. They went to become the 26th. If you look at goals for and goals against, they actually took a jump, a step down in production in goals for, but that's not a surprise when you make note of the fact that Derek Lalonde's system, and he even spoke about it in his own media availability, is primarily a defense first mindset. So while their goals for per game went down in 2022, they were I should have written it down instead of just filtering it back and looking again. That's on me. Where they were 18th in the league for goals for last year, and now this year they were 28th, which is a steep jump down. But their goals against per game improved from year over year as well.
Well, and
They were
the thing
29th last year in goals per game, goals against per game, and 24th this year in goals against per game. So overall, it was an improvement. And again, Corsi 4 percentage will back you up on that one.
Yeah, well, and even just looking more, I don't know, broad is maybe the word. Like we talked about it a lot, but every single, well, not every, 7 of 8 teams in this division got better, and like that's something that we cited going into the season too. Like in our season preview episode, we were like, hey, we want to be one of the best teams in the league to miss the postseason. We want to be right on the edge of that. And I guess you would say that they a little bit, again, like they it's not like they had a chance to make the postseason in the last 2 weeks of the season or anything like that, but they didn't get mathematically eliminated until, a few games left. And like I don't know. I think that this is I still think that this is a successful season. And I still think that given what we set out to accomplish going into the year, that we checked all of those boxes well enough for me to deem this successful. And again, as I said at the beginning, like every other team outside of the Habs got better. Like everyone in this division got better. So yes, standings wise, you weren't the 17 seed in the NHL or anything like that, but you still took steps forward and improved your point total even despite 7 other teams or 6 other teams, I guess, not including you, getting better in your own division.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is one more thing. Obviously it was incremental improvements, and like you said, the team stayed competitive until the end. But there is one category that we set out at the beginning of the year, besides just points, that we wanted to definitively see as something that took I wouldn't say leap, but a step forward this year. And they
Yeah.
did. And we'll talk about that. But first, I got to talk to you guys about Athletic Greens. This next partner is a product you got to use literally every day. Start taking AG1, because with one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging, all those things. Start taking AG1 because it's lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, and it contains less than 1 gram of sugar with no GMOs, no nasty chemicals, or artificial anything, while still tasting good. Athletic Greens was created when the founder experienced a ton of gut health issues and ended up on a complicated routine of supplements to recover. It cost him $100 a day, but guess what? The founder created Athletic Greens, and it's going to cost you less than $3 a day, and it's cheaper than that cold brew habit to get an all-in-one nutritional insurance. And it has over 7,000 5-star reviews and is trusted by professional athletes everywhere. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop and a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different supplements and pills to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, there is one other category where I think the Red Wings, we said at the beginning of the season at set out, they needed to improve on to make this season a success, and that is special teams. And believe it or not, guys, special teams took especially the penalty kill, took a pretty damn big leap forward. Now, they were 32nd in the league in penalty kill last year. So it's hard to get worse than that. I think we said that at the beginning of the year as well.
And it's been like a historic pace for the last 2 seasons before this one. So
Yes.
very low bar, but
we set out and we said that we wanted the power play and the penalty kill to finish somewhere between 10 and 20 in the league. We wanted them to be middle of the pack. We wanted the 5-on-5 to be middle of the pack too. We didn't get that. But that's just, again, new regime, new coaching. It's going to take time for systems to get implemented. The special teams, though, did take a step forward this year under the Detroit Red Wings' new coaching staff. Last year, they were 32nd in the league in penalty kill. This year, 18th in the league with a 79%, way better than their near 74% last year.
I mean, we weren't even asking to be great. Just, the fact
Middle of
that
the
you
pack.
went from as bad as you were to even like a middle of the pack. Like you were a middle 10 like penalty kill. Like that's a win. And then next year you take another step forward. Like we'll take that for a 1-to-1 year sample.
Power play did the same exact thing. Last year, it was 26th in the league with a 16.3% success rate. This year, it was 17th in the league with a 21% success rate. So that was also middle of the pack where we asked them to be. It's between 10 and 20, be somewhere in that range. And you guys might be listening and thinking, wow, they're calling it a successful season just for being middle of the pack at best. But that's because you and I, Scotty, we understand what this team was and what this team wasn't. We came into the season saying at best they would get a wild card team or wild card spot. And that is if Boston falls off and Ottawa doesn't live up to expectations. That didn't happen. Ottawa was competitive throughout most of the season, even though they actually ended up getting eliminated like an hour before you did, which is ironic in the end. But Boston found new heights. And then Florida, Toronto, and Tampa were still competitive, although it took Florida a little while to find their groove. So they ended up finishing right where we expected them to be. We expected them to be outside the playoffs in the 80-point range and have taken a step forward, with individual players as well as a team game. And they did. And that's why, Scotty, in my opinion, despite missing the playoffs for the 7th straight year, it was a successful season because we saw improvement.
Yeah, I'm obviously lockstep with you, and yeah, like I don't want to make this sound like a loser's mentality like thing. Like nobody likes missing the postseason. Obviously, we all want to get back there. That's the goal year in and year out. And for a glorious whatever it was, 10 days in March, we were kind of trying to alter our expectations to try to make that push, and obviously it didn't happen. But um, no, like this is just comparing our preseason expectations to what happened through 82 games. And when you compare what the two of us individuals thought we were going to accomplish this season, they checked pretty much every box of what we wanted them to. And,
Yeah.
and so uh, another step forward needs to be taken next year. Obviously, a very, very, very important offseason. But if you're just lining up what Brian and I thought that the Wings could and should accomplish this season, they did most of that.
Absolutely. And another thing too, this was the first season, and I don't know how long, that the Red Wings actually had players, individuals on the team that finished the year with over a 50% Corsi for percentage, 50% Fenwick, 50% expected goals for percentage. And that comes the way of, we should. This is tough too, because at the top of these lists, you always get guys who only played a handful of games because a smaller sample size benefits them if they had played well. So, like Tyler Bertuzzi technically finished with 29 games played with 50.34%, but he got traded. So, really, the list begins with Jake Wollman. Jake Wollman, in his 63 games played, had a 50.19 Corsi for percentage. He had a 51.36 Fenwick. He had a 52.31 expected goals for percentage. Across a year, that's very good. The bar is 50. So if you're anywhere above 50, that means when you were on the ice, you were a benefit to the team. Jake Wollman was one of those guys. He was the only player on the team with an above 50% Corsi for percentage. But if you take away blocked shots, because that's what Fenwick is, if you take away blocked shots on shot attempts, there were several players on the team that had an above 50%. Fenwick, you got Zadina in his limited 30-game stint, 51.55. You had, again, Bertuzzi, Soderblom in his 21 games, David Perron and Dylan Larkin. So, again, that's just a small achievement. It doesn't really mean much in the end of things, but it's kind of like a feather in the cap that you finally, in 1 year, had guys in the team who were better than the opponent when they were on the ice. It doesn't mean anything. I understand that in the grand scheme of things, but it's nice to see individual players be guys who can, when they're on the ice, the team possesses the puck more than the other team. Like, that's not nothing either.
No, I don't think it's nothing at all. I think that's a pretty, you're not going to raise a banner or anything, obviously, but I think that's a pretty big thing to point out. And I mean, if you're talking about like an individual side of things, sure, there were some players that maybe we expected a little bit more of over the course of the full season. Like Raymond is someone that everyone loves to argue about these days for whatever reason, but like there might not be a bigger success story in the entire Wings organization than Jake Wollman this season. Like
Yeah.
that is it should not be overlooked or forgotten how like massive of a win that is for this organization. This was a guy that was not really talked about a ton when that trade happened, and was somebody that like certainly we thought we wanted to get playing time out of and get solid minutes out of and whatnot. But for him to do so well this year that he jumped all the way to first pairing D man for a majority of the season and got an extension and all that, like I'm not sure there's a bigger win literally in the entire organization.
Yeah, and not to say this was a perfect year either, though, right? I mean, there were still
No,
plenty of
certainly
areas
not.
where I wish they had done better. 5-on-5 play was a huge sticking point the entire season. While the
This is still
defense,
not a playoff team.
yeah, no,
Like,
obviously, scoring was lower than it was last year.
Mhm.
And again, that's just a consequence of the type of system that the Red Wings are looking to run right now. And it's going to take a little while for that to groove, and because good defense will lead to good scoring, and vice versa, though. True, but as well as just the fact that they couldn't stay healthy. That's not really a failing. That's not like, I mean, you can't put that on anyone, and it happens to every team. But like
Yeah.
losing guys like Rasmussen and Woolman, that just stunk. Absolutely stunk. And plus, I mean, you want to talk, maybe we should do like a team awards episode, because when you're talking team MVP this year, I mean, obviously Larkin's going to be in there with his career high in points, but Woolman and Rasmussen, they're right there as well, in my opinion.
Yeah, I
Fact,
mean, Ras was definitely another one that's kind of in the same conversation as Wallman, as having taken a big step forward and kind of solidifying a role going forward when going into the season. I think a lot of people for both of them certainly didn't expect the Wallman thing, but we're probably a little shaky on Ras even becoming like a whatever solidified middle six forward.
And when we're going to take another quick break, but when we come back, we're kind of going to talk about that, because both Lalonde and Yzerman spoke to the media and to season availability, and they mentioned what they thought was the successful parts of the season and failures, shortcomings this year as well. And I bet you can probably guess where Rasmussen and Woolman fall on their side of the meter. So we'll talk about that in segment 3 of Lockdown Red Wings. Segment 3, Lockdown Red Wings podcast. Newsy and Yzerman spoke to the media on Friday, I think it was. And they had a lot to say. They were asked a lot. Yzerman had a 50-minute presser. I was so shocked that he spoke for that long. But of course, typical Yzerman stuff. They ask him a question and he answers it in a way where you can't really take anything of substance.
Yeah.
But what I really liked is when they asked him and Lalonde about guys who were in particular huge. I know Lalonde spoke a lot about how important Rasmussen was to this team's motor this year. That Rasmussen was a top 6 forward, and that you can divide it. I'm paraphrasing here because I don't have the direct quotes written, but he's like, before Rasmussen was hurt and after Rasmussen hurt, like how much the team changed. And he's right, to be honest. Now, the team 5-on-5 wise was bad all year long, but there was certainly like a piece of the motor that seemed to have gone missing once Rasmussen was injured.
Yeah, well, that's for a team that really. I mean, you want to talk about some of the downsides of the season or areas for improvement still. Like this team very much still needs to establish itself as a team who can hang with others physically. Like this is a team that really got bullied at times, especially by a few specific teams this year. And to lose that size that you did have, the little size that you do have, to lose pretty much all of it with one player, especially post deadline and everything, with like Sundqvist and whatnot gone, that definitely was a big blow. But production wise too, I mean, he, like I said, he really established himself as a really productive kind of bottom 6 forward for your team.
Remember the Redwood line? All gone.
I know.
Rasmussen, season-ending injury. Sundqvist traded. Elmer Soderblom hurt, sent down, hurt again. Just no luck. But Yzerman had quite a few interesting little tidbits he gave us about young players in the system as well. And I'd make sure I want to get to this, because talking about Carter Mazur and Amadeus Lombardi, Yzerman had this to say. He said that he sees Carter Mazur as an NHL caliber player, and he sees that as sooner rather than later in terms of that. Now, of course, that doesn't imply when soon is and when later is, but he talked about like next season or the season after that for Carter Mazur, which I'm like, he said that he likes everything that Mazur has, like his vision, his speed. He goes to the right places. And he talked about Amadeus Lombardi too. He said he had a fantastic year in the Flint Firebird system, which we obviously already know, but also that he was a fun little player, which is so like, he's like 5'9" or 5'10". He's an undersized winger. It's absolutely true. It's going to be his biggest hurdle to overcome. Like, I know I'm hyped up on Amadeus Lombardi because of his ceiling, but his size is going to be something to overcome. He's only like 170 pounds, 5'9". He's small. And so playing against men, NHL, AHL, he's going to have to overcome that. But he definitely did see a path to the NHL for Amadeus Lombardi and made note to be like, that's like, he could be a productive winger. He says that size, he saw him as I believe he said he saw him being the type of player who could overcome that size and be a productive winger. Kind of like, other guys we have seen in the league that,
for sure.
Not to that extent. I'm not trying to compare him to like Johnny Gaudreau, but that he can overcome the size.
I mean, like obviously that's the goal, but I I don't know. I just every time we have a conversation about like the future or whatnot, I just get really excited for like this upcoming season.
Yeah.
This offseason is going to be important. Obviously, you're going to see more kids play. There's going to be more call ups. I think this upcoming season is going to be really fun.
Yeah, he also said he loved Sebastian Cosa's attitude. He said that's the biggest thing that he's loved about him is that even though despite the struggles, his attitude's been really good about it, always
Yeah.
working to get better. And then he finished in ECHL very strong this year. And when asked whether or not he'd take over the reins in Grand Rapids, he basically said if he takes over the reins, he'll take it over because he took it over. It's not going to be given to him.
Yeah,
So,
which I mean, that's what you want to hear. That's what you want. So
yeah, absolutely. Both were asked about Lucas Raymond's season, and they both basically said the same thing. It was okay. Some
yeah,
players struggle in their second year, and he'll have to learn to overcome that, which is pretty much where we're at. We're not writing off Lucas Raymond.
yeah. Well, I mean, no, it's been such a weird, I don't know, conversation dialogue surrounding him this year. I really hope he gets off to a hot start next year so that we can kind of just like put that stuff to bed. But yeah, he's still got some areas to work on for sure. I mean, we talk about size, like that's another thing that he needs to kind of not assert himself, but kind of prove that the physicality isn't going to be overmatched or overbearing at this level, and definitely needs to convert on some more chances too, because the dialogue again, like surrounding him after his rookie year versus after his sophomore year within the fan base is
It's
quite
crazy.
different.
Yeah, you go from hearing people talk about him as like a 40 goal scorer to that people trying to trade him off because he's a bust. And it's like the kid's 20. I
Yeah.
think 21 now, but it's like holy cow, like slow down, people. Yeah, there's so much to get to and just not enough time to do it. But we have a packed week ahead of us, so we'll try to get to as much as this is
Long off
possible.
season.
They asked about his assistants and coaches, Lalonde, and he said he expects them all to be back. He said obviously there'll be conversations with Yzerman, but he liked everything that they saw this year out of them. And honestly, like obviously 5-on-5 again is a huge sticking point, but that's not something that's going to be fixed in 1 year. And nor do I think you should do a turnover in your coaching staff in your first year. Like it takes a while for systems to be implemented. Like you need at least 2 years
Yeah.
to really see it an improvement. So I'm all aboard that if you ask me.
Yeah, same. And again, like I don't know if there's any coaching changes you could make to like fix what you want to improve in like overnight.
Yeah.
Like you just gotta, you invested in this head coach, you just gotta see it through.
And then they also asked, or I guess this isn't really a question, more of a statement, but Lalonde admitted during the press conference that this team wasn't a playoff team and he didn't see them as a playoff team. He's like, he even said, I would never say this during the season to the players because I want them to fight. But even throughout the season, in the back of my mind, looking at the teams they were playing against, he couldn't see them winning a 7-game series against anyone. And that's why they're not playing Monday or Tuesday because they couldn't get there. But he did give credit to the leadership group because he said at one point the leadership group came in and said, if we just win, go 9-3 in the next 12 games, we can be right there. And they really believed that it was something that they could do and it was possible. And Malone said he looked at like the schedule and was like, how are we going to do this? And then he said they went 8-2. Right. So he said that the fact that they were in it as long as they were had as much to do with the players' drive to try and compete as it did to any kind of system they were implementing. That even though he didn't see this team as a playoff team, they fought hard to stay in that race as long as possible, which I love that. I love that so much.
Absolutely.
Just to know that the locker room, even though you don't have a Austin Matthews or a Connor McDavid, the locker room is still fighting tooth and nail to try and get there. It shows the drive that this team has, that this new core is getting.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's that's important. You need identity and you need leadership.
Absolutely. And then Ville Husso, they were both asked about Ville Husso, and they both kind of had the same answer. They both basically said it was a combination of workload and injury. Workload, and this is something that I kind of went off on Ville Husso a few episodes back, and something was brought up to me later was a great comment. Just be like, you got to keep in mind that this is his first year as like a starter. He's played 20 more games than he ever has in a single season in his NHL career, so he'd get worn down, especially behind, albeit an improved defense, still not like a league average defense. And that's definitely part of it. You saw the dip in his play begin before he got hurt, and then both Yzerman and Lalonde admitted, like, even though physically he was ready to play again, maybe mentally he was not, because they had told him and he was planned to not play again, and he was shut down essentially. And then all of a sudden plans changed and he was able to play again. So they thought that maybe he was workload, and then mentally he was just not there last few games, and that's why we didn't get, which is fair. I mean, I'm not giving up on Husso. I was just definitely frustrated at the performances, but there's definitely a fairness to that I will admit to.
For sure. Well, and we've talked about it so much, including that same episode you're referencing there. Like, the future of goalie pre Kosa era beginning is still like very much a debated and fascinating conversation. So, um, yeah, we'll see what they do. We'll see what they definitely are bringing someone in, because they just like don't have another goalie right now at the NHL
Yeah.
level outside of Husso. Like, I don't think they're bringing back either of the other two that played between the pipes this year outside of him. So we'll see what the future looks like. But I mean, it could range from anything from like Husso's net, we get a backup, to we go out and try and acquire somebody that's gonna be 1A 1B, kind of a closer to an even split. Or I mean, I don't know, or they just go crazy and try to acquire like one of the better goalies in the league and make Husso a backup. I don't know. That one probably seems a little far fetched, but you have the assets to pull off trades. So we'll see. There's a lot of variance that can come with what the immediate future of goalie looks like, and Husso obviously is going to be involved in that. So
I completely agree. They obviously asked Lalonde about who would be making the team next year. And of course, just like last year, he said whoever earns it, which is the right response. But in regards to Edvinsson and Casper, he basically said that if they could push somebody out of a roster spot, then they were going to start the season. And that he even implied that Johansson would have gotten a look at the NHL level had he not gotten hurt, which is kind of common sense because he was playing so good.
Yeah, we talked about that a lot. Yeah,
we thought he was going to get called up, and then we found out he was hurt. And it's like,
right. Yeah. Then we were reminded. That's cool though. It's awesome. Again, like, even if they don't make the team, healthy competition, or like setting a bar where like, okay, if we're gonna bring in a free agent, they got to be whatever, at least good enough to hold one of these kids down for a little bit longer, whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
that's a good bar and a good system to establish.
And then lastly, the last thing I'm going to say, I think it's the last of the important ones to really talk about. They asked Yzerman about free agency, and he said that he's, of course, going to be active in every regard. He said draft, trade, free agency. He's going to be as active as possible, but he's, of course, he can't guarantee he's going to get anyone because that's not how it works. But he did admit that it's a smaller group of players that they're looking at than it was last year, which is something that I think everyone is going to say across the board. He said, for whatever reason, free agency is like smaller this year. Not as many big name players hitting the free agent market. So he's going to look at all options. He even talked about, they asked him about all those draft picks and maybe moving them. And he said, I'm going to look at all options. He did make note. He's like, I'm not going to do anything out of desperation. He says, if I can get a player, an impact player, to make this team better immediately, I will, but I'm not going to do anything out of desperation. It has to fit. Sure. You know, he said he's going to weigh the short term and the long term options.
For sure. And I mean, that's great to hear, I guess. Like, I don't know. That's like classic Yzerman speak. Like, awesome. That's great. That's that's, the goal. And I hope that comes to fruition. But he basically said, like, I'm going to try to do this, but like, if I don't, that's possible too. So like, I mean, like, sure. Yeah. He covered all bases. He literally talked about every single possibility. Involving adding big name players. So
overall,
but vital offseason, as we've said a million times.
Overall, it felt like both of them felt it was a step in the right direction, but were not super impressed with the season they had, which I think is a very fair reaction. We call it a successful season, but it's not like we're over the moon. So the Red Wings still missed the playoffs. So
yeah, I mean that's where I think that's where kind of we're at too. Like it's you accomplished everything you set out to accomplish going into the year, but you didn't exceed any of those really either. Yeah. You didn't like that, believe it or not. And I know that we're like Detroit sports fans, so like this is kind of crazy when you hear that it exists, but like believe it or not, some teams overperform what they're supposed to do. Like, I guess the Lions a little bit we had last year, but like some teams actually like do better than what is expected of them sometimes. And it's been a long time since we've seen that. And again, like before the Lions last year, it was probably maybe a decade since we have seen that between any of these teams. So like it's that is possible. Like and again, that's why I'm kind of in this like it was successful, but I'm not throwing a parade either. Like this was right. This was still a bottom 10 finish in the NHL. Like, you know what I mean? Like and again, like you flared out at the end and whatnot. You were in it in the middle of the season and you didn't get eliminated late. Like I understand all that, but optically, like you could have done better. You could have improved on more. And there's still a lot of shortcomings on this team on April 17th.
Absolutely. All right, Scotty, is there any final thoughts that you would like to share?
We ball.
We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow. We have an interview scheduled to begin our draft profiles on Tuesday, rather. So, because by the time you listen to this, it's Monday. But of course, anything can happen, anything can change. So we're not gonna reveal who it is yet, because you never know what's gonna happen. But we're scheduled to have a draft profile tomorrow. So stay tuned. Same time, same place. Your team every day.
Every day.